Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CRM for Credit Unions webinar. I'm really excited to have our VP of CX Solutions, Sam Thepvongs, and our Principal Solution Architect, Karl Phenix, on the webinar today to share their thoughts on the direction the credit union is headed in and discuss how to overcome some of the challenges that are facing credit unions today. So just a few housekeeping items before we jump into today's webinar. We encourage you guys to ask and all questions you might have for Sam and Karl, and you can do so by entering them into the chat window in the GoToWebinar panel. We do have a lot of content to cover in just 30 minutes, so if we don't get to questions at the end of the webinar, we will reach out to you directly to get those answered for you. And lastly, we are recording this webinar, and we'll be sharing it out to all of you following the presentation. And it will include contact information if you want to get a hold of Sam and Karl and have any follow-up items you'd like to discuss with them. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sam to kick things off.
Thank you, Whitney. Again, this is Sam Thepvongs, and it's my pleasure to spend the next 30 minutes with you to talk about our thoughts around what CRM for credit unions is all about. So today's goals, we're going to talk to you about what CRM for credit unions is all about, like I said, and really, even though the label here of this session is called Customer Relationship Management, or CRM for credit unions, what this is really about is the member relationship management and our thoughts around that. We're going to then describe the need for CRM as the world around us continues to evolve at such a rapid pace, followed by a demonstration by Karl. So let's go ahead and get started. Understanding the need for MRM or CRM, this is about using our experience, having worked with over 190 credit unions as our customer base. What we hear from our customers is that they're dealing with a whole bunch of challenges that are really affecting how they see the world both today and in the future. And these challenges really surround around three major things, right? One is increasing the products and services leveraged by your members, that your members may not be aware of all the capabilities and services that you as a credit union have to offer. Number two is attracting new members in a very complex and evolving environment. And we'll get to that quite a bit over the course of the presentation section. And three, really because of what we see around the overall customer experience in the sense of their buying experiences as they buy products, especially in the e-commerce world, and we use Amazon as a prime example of that, no pun intended, that our expectations as consumers are significantly affecting how we interact with any organization, to include credit unions. So with that, this slide is very important about establishing the need for MRM. Think about current members and then think about future members when you look at this graph. And what this graph is basically showing is something we already likely or inherently know, right? Which is, depending on the age group, right? People have very different preferences on how they expect to interact digitally. But the key takeaway here is to look at how dominant the smartphone is across all demographics. But if you are marketing to a younger person, perhaps for the next wave of your members, that digital experience must be front and center, because look how dominant that channel is. Note here too, I purposely left off voice, which I'll get to momentarily. Now, this next slide is about the experience evolution, kind of driving home this kind of conversation about voice. And really the left side of this graph really articulates what organizations really did in the past, right, before 1995, which is, organizations were able to dictate how they want to serve their members, because there's only a set of predominant expectations that existed out there to go away and interact and engage with their members. But over time, that has changed quite a bit, in that customers are forcing the hand of credit unions and other organizations to say, hey, we expect to change the way that we want as consumers and as members to interact with your brand. And that's significantly important, because for you to be able to adjust and be able to continue to meet the expectations of your members, you need to be attuned to those expectations. Now, bring this all together, the first two slides. We've talked about digital channels, and in the last slide, we talked a little about voice. but they, this slide I like a lot because what this brings out is the fact that, talking to a person, either in person or on the phone, is still very important, regardless of demographic, right? This is what we see is that this personal experience is a primary channel for those personal experiences that's typically centered around a couple of things from our experience. One is problem resolution or escalation, personalized information gathering around potentially other credit union products and services, or potentially bigger life events that drive people's needs to feel reassured during those most significant events, such as signing a document for a loan. So don't think that voice is necessarily going away. It's just really changing how we're using voice and being more consultative while creating that personal connection that your members expect. Now, digital is still relevant, as we talked about previously, but the things people use on those digital channels are for convenience purposes and that don't require necessarily that personal touch. The other thing I want you to think about is, as people use these channels, do they just typically use just one channel? Hold on to that thought for a moment. What do you think your members expect when they don't just need one specific channel? As an example, let's say you're having a phone conversation with one of your friends. The next time you see them, do you expect that last interaction and preceding interactions, regardless of channel, text, phone, to provide you context of what you're going to talk about next? Hopefully so, because otherwise you're just going to be a forgetful friend. In the world we live in today, that's the type of connections your members expect of you, which is continuing a personalized, contextually relevant conversation that's meaningful and seamless. So now that we've covered these member experience challenges, let's finally define what member relationship is all about. So member relationship management is a system that we define as it's designed to be the center point for all engagements, surfacing relevant information to improve the relationship between you and your members. Now, as credit unions, you need the capability to engage your members in a modern way that takes into account the need to make every interaction personal, contextually relevant, and seamless. Now, in order to do that, there are things that we must have in place to address these member experience challenges. One, provide a 360-degree view of your members. You need to be able to understand your members in detail because information is the core of what informs how you will interact with your members. As an example, when you pick up the phone, would it be nice to know what products that member has when you're servicing a call, and what products they don't have, so that you can educate them on the other products you have to offer? Since we hear all the time that members aren't always aware of products the credit unions have to offer, or vice versa, perhaps don't offer me a mortgage if I already have one with you. Number two, providing context around every engagement opportunity, both for real-time interactions and future interactions. I used a friend example in a previous slide. One of the things that credit unions have always had an advantage of in compared to banks is a sense of community and the foundation of what credit unions are built on. Something that ties your members together. But given the evolution of this member expectation and how they are interacting with you, there's so much more that you need to do to be effective and creating that context. So as another example, if you know one of your members has a kid that's about to get their driver's license, wouldn't it be nice to bring up your auto loan option next time the member calls in or comes to the branch, comes to your website? Or alternatively, perhaps the member hasn't done much with you recently, so perhaps a friendly reminder or marketing email would be a good idea. Lastly, using member activity to help drive outcomes more efficiently. So let's say a member browses your website for a mortgage and they call the same day. What do you think that member is likely going to talk about? Wouldn't it be great if your service rep knows that they were just on your website today, and to be prepared to talk about mortgage products and rates and how easy it is to get them pre-approved for a loan, making the entire member experience seamless? Do you think people think twice about buying on Amazon, and why is that? Because of how convenient it is. 10 years ago, you would have run to the store, made errands around town to pick up a whole bunch of items. Now, people don't even think twice about making that same run because they go directly to one single place because of how convenient it is. Making the process of achieving the outcomes of your members seamless, and you'll find a higher conversion rate in the scenario I just provided for a mortgage because of how easy you're making that transaction to them. So now I'll turn it over to Karl for a demonstration of what this might look like in the real world. Karl?
Thanks, Sam. I'm going to go ahead and take control. All right. So there's really two experiences that we want to talk about to reinforce what Sam has been mentioning. And that is the role of someone who's dealing with your members inside of an organization, which is the view that we're looking at right here, and also the actual experience of the member, which is this view, the front-end web experience. We're going to start here. And really, what Sam has been talking about is this need to expand the channels of communication and start to offer things that people in different demographics need and desire, as well as things that they've come to get used to in the way that they integrate and work with other organizations that they have accounts with, their Amazons, as Sam mentioned, and the social media platforms that they use day to day. And so by taking the step to build out a member experience for a website, many of you will have already taken that step, but it's about combining a lot of those engagements in one. And so what we're looking at here is a web portal that is providing information about products, as well as combining the management of that member's profile, and also the need for them to be able to communicate with you through the same platform. So as we look here, we've got a website that's got information about different services and products, as well as FAQs, so they can start to find out more information potentially about becoming a member of the Thepvongs Credit Union. Immediately, you can see that we've got calls to action for them to, perhaps take a personal loan and take a look at that. We can also quickly open a chat and open up that channel of communication, which extends the demographic for people who want to do that, whether it's a live chat or perhaps a bot that is open to store that information after hours. So you don't have to work within the 9 to 5 confines, but rather have communications that can go 24/7 if different people are looking to get information about the credit union. So as you can see, we're logged in as Jenny here. And as Jenny comes in, maybe she's got some questions that she needs answers on. And so if she wanted to, she could navigate over to the knowledge base where there's lots and lots of FAQs that have been created inside the system so that you can take those questions that get asked again and again and provide those answers so that you're not burdening the sort of member services part of your organization with answering things that are very easy to be self-serve. And people are expecting this self-service experience as they work with the different subscriptions that they have, or their utilities, their banking, their credit unions. They're expecting to be able to self-serve and find their answers themselves rather than having to pick up the phone or communicate. So she could come in here and find an answer to her question, give it a rating so that there's a feedback loop so you can see whether people like the content or not, as well as adding comments and having a conversation. And this is important from a credit union perspective, as Sam mentioned about that sense of community. It's not a huge corporate bank where you can't have that back and forth, but as we'll see in a second, if we add comments and we want to communicate, the member services from the inside working out can also communicate back and forth in a very, sort of tight relationship that is expected with that credit union experience. So if we continue to look, maybe the answer to the question that Jenny has is not something that she can actually find. And so she could even come in here and open a new case and ask a question. But even at this point, we're still using the technology to give her the ability to find her own answers. So, I want to change my payment date of my car loan. And so she goes to create a question, but immediately we're giving her answers so she can say, oh, maybe this is going to tell me whether I can do that or not. And we deflect away, provide that self-service for her before she has to go through and actually ask the question and have it dealt with. So when it's immediate response that allows her to self-serve, which obviously gives her a far better experience rather than having to wait for time for someone to get back. Now, of course, if she doesn't find the answer, she can continue to come down here and dictate, what it is that she's asking a question about, even upload files, if she's looking to send proof of documentation or something like that. So she can continue to do that. And as she does that, all of these interactions that she's having, again, are things that she can manage on this web portal. So if she, has a question and she submits something, she doesn't have to rely on a single channel of communication to respond back, but rather she could have a chat about it. She could come in here and add a comment and ask questions. And again, whether you're on a mobile device or tablet or desktop, or you pick up the phone, the communications that you're having are not isolated to a single path, but rather they could be combining lots of different channels. So she can have part of the conversation in the morning on her way to work, and then she can respond to you via email or chat while she's at her desk, and continue to have that communication across the same question, but in a number of different channels. So as well as the member services and the ability for people to use this to communicate, we can also expand it into things like leads and generation and interest in new products. So if I wanted to, I could come in here and I could click on the auto loan application, and I could go through and I could start to fill out this information that allows me to populate the approval for an auto loan. I can even attach documents in here and add files so that I can do everything digitally rather than having to necessarily scan things or be in person. And so what the portal is able to do is able to say, we're going to give you all of this functionality, and we're also going to work on streamlining the process to nudge you towards making a decision, submitting, and getting that loan application. And so, if Jenny's sort of halfway through this and she decides to do something else and she goes back home, well, you can see that the home page is going to know that she's in the middle of doing that application and prompt her to say, listen, you're almost there. Do you want to finish your auto loan application, or do you want to talk to us about it, right? And so it's stepping in and providing that information that's relevant and contextual to the actions that she is taking as she works with the credit union, as opposed to being a catch-all. So that personalization is being derived from real, tangible things that she's taking action on, so that it's really relevant to what she's doing. So as well as all of this, submitting applications, looking at product, service, she can also fulfill the, ability to go in and change her contact information, check her balances, all that good stuff that you would expect her to be able to do through a digital channel as well. And lastly, just before we move into the back-end solution, this chat communication, there's a number of different things that we can use to trigger that. So do we want to ask a question and simply get an answer? Do we want to get a follow-up on an existing issue that maybe I spoke to somebody about yesterday? Or do we want to just transfer and talk to somebody, right? So the ability, even within a single channel, such as a chat, to expand and promote things that are, if we're in a demographic where we want to talk to somebody, put it right alongside the person who wants to not talk to anybody and just ask a question, right? And this is a bot that's doing this. So it's, again, taking away the burden of somebody having to man this and saying, well, it's not until we talk to an agent that we transfer it to somebody else. Okay, so we've taken a look at the front-end experience for a member, and let's transition now and show what the back-end CRM or MRM solution looks like. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the ability to bubble all of the information to the surface in the form of a dashboard. So here we can quickly see things that are related to member support. So we can see the cases that were created today, the origin of them. We can see what the product issues are that are trending. Are there a lot of questions about loans, checking in savings? Again, the mix of the origin, where are, we can see a lot of people are calling in comparison to emailing. And we can also dive into this and say, well, of all of the people who have called in, or of the conversations that are happening, I want to know, what is the actual query about? And I can see that, and it's going to show me, well, it's, these questions are about information that they're asking. And I can view these records at any time and dive into them and see exactly what's going on, right? So if I want to work visually and look at charts and dashboards in regards to member support, I can do that. And equally, as well as looking at the support channels, I can use exactly the same platform to view the, potential sales that are coming in. So pending auto loan sales dashboard, I can see, the sum of the vehicles that people are looking to loan based on their FICO score. I can see the payment terms that people are requesting and all of the top qualified candidates here. So I can dive into these and work with them if that's my job. And so the one experience that you see here can be divided up nicely so that people with different roles can use the same platform to do their daily job. If we do take a look at a member, this really gets to what Sam was talking about that member 360 view. So here we're looking at Jenny, from the back end. And you can see lots of different things. First of all, we can see what she looks like, we can see who she last interacted with, and we can see her contact information. This is super important because it gives the context of the fact that she was talking to Fred. So if she calls in, I can say, I see you were talking to Fred. And immediately our timeline right here shows us all of the different communications that have been happening with Jenny, so I can get context as to whether she was on the phone with him this morning, last week, whether she sent an email, and I can quickly give that contextual update to her without saying, well, what's going on? Can you please explain it all again to me? Also right here, I can see the recent cases that she's created, right? So if there's something that's going on, I can take a look at them. I can see any products that she has, as well as some personal notes that we may have made here. So ask about a grandchild due on the 21st of May, right? So if I'm talking to her, I can quickly say, hey, I can see that you've got a grandchild due. And it's about that personal communication and that sense of community that credit unions are so great at doing. As well as all of the data in one single place, we're opening up the channels of communication. So do I want to place a phone call? And I can pop right out here into Pure Cloud, which is allowing me to place these calls and have this conversation with Interaction Sync from Genesis right alongside this member record. So I don't have to use another system. So we've got, the ability to wrap up calls. So it's just a general request, and move this out of the way and then continue with my job so that I can see, here are the different phone calls that are happening and all of the interactions. If I want to send a text message, I could do that. If I want to send an email with a template, if I want to comment on the portal back to somebody, I can do all of that from one single pane of glass. And, we can make it really easy to make these communications seamless. So if we're communicating with Jenny, I can say, well, I want to say thank you to her, and it's going to put in a template for me, and I can customize it to be more personal. Or if I want to send her an update, or if I want to send her a survey, right? And we can use this form of communication. And of course, this could be also automated, so it goes out automatically based on the resolution of a case or an inquiry. We also take a look at what's happening when we view a member and the 360 view. The context of what's happening allows me to make informed decisions. And if we think about people who are working really quickly on answering questions, sometimes the last thing they're thinking about is, what should I do next? How do I wrap this up? And what Sam was talking about is that relevant contextual information about the products they have and maybe what's the next best conversation that they're having. So if we scroll down here, if I'm having a conversation with Jenny, I can see that there's an auto loan promotion that's going on. And this is being given to me as saying, listen, is Jenny interested in this or not? And this is based on the fact that perhaps she's been talking about an auto loan that she's interested in. And so it's going to provide that relevant next best conversation to me without me having to try and work that out. The system is going to do that for me. Also, as we look along these different tabs, we put it into areas where we can see the member insights, any loans that are closed. So if there's questions, what this is allowing us to do is have one tab without having to go to multiple different tabs to see that information. So if we want to click into member insights, we can see that she's made payments, we can see that she's done responses. And again, it's just a single click away from the 360 view of the member to get all of that information in one single view. As you see across the top here, we've got this process bar that's going through. And this is another great way that an MRM solution allows you to bring compliance and process into your communications with your members. So in this example, perhaps when someone calls in, you need to confirm that they are who they say they are. Well, if you have all of this information around a form, sometimes it's not easy for someone to go and find, where's the address, where's the zip code. But what we can do is we can put all of that information into a process. So you can go through, and as soon as the call comes in, this can pop up, we can verify the information, and then we can move to the next step. And from here, we can say, have we confirmed who this member is? And the answer is yes. Then we can start to take some call notes. If we haven't confirmed who they are, then we don't have any call notes because the call cannot continue, right? And so the process can be completely dynamic based on the interactions that you're having with the customer. And it allows an agent who's dealing with them to move through a process that's been defined by the business so that you can really keep a consistent interaction as you talk to your members as well. So from here, we've got lots of different things that we can view information about, but what happens if we want to take some actions? Well, we've got our ribbon right across the top, which allows us to do things very quickly and easily, like assign this to somebody else that they're asking for, add them to a marketing list. Maybe they're looking for information or a document to get printed out for like a proof of address or something like that, or an account summary. And we can integrate with all of the Office 365 platform here to say, yeah, I want to create a Word template, like a member document. And that's going to create a Word template right down here, which if we open up, and I'll drag across the screen, you can brand it so it comes out with your credit union's header, and then all of the information that you need to put that's pertinent can be created dynamically based on that. And if you need to fax this to somebody, put it in a letter, or just hand it over as you're talking to them, you can also do that. The other thing that we want to talk about is the context of who you are and how you're dealing with a member. So in this scenario, as we've been looking at it, Jenny has been somebody who's either been on the phone or she's been having comments or emails, communications to us. But what happens if she's in the branch? A lot of this isn't quite relevant. So what we can also do inside of the CRM solution is we can show different experiences based on what you are doing with the member. So we have an in-branch version. And if we flip to the in-branch, what it's going to do is it's going to change it to give us the accounts overview right up top, because that's probably the information that you need to know if they're looking to withdraw money or anything like that. And so we can also see their home branch. So you can say, okay, we know that they last visited. So we can have a communication to say, you know, it's been a long time since you've been in, or, you know, you're a regular here, and to know that context based on the view that you're looking at. Again, using the technology to provide information to those who are dealing with the members to give them a more personal experience. So as well as dealing with an actual member, we talked a little bit about, you know, how do we deal with member services? What happens if there's a query that comes in? Well, it's the same type of experience. You can see we've still got our member Jenny, but now instead of all the activities of her account, this is isolated on the question that she has about changing her payment date. And so from here, we've got a completely different process allowing us to identify the problem. Is it a request? Is it a question? Is it a problem? And as you can see, this process, again, is defined by what we pick. So is it a question? I need to research it and resolve it. Is it a problem? I need to research it and maybe escalate it. Or is it a request that we do something? We'll have to schedule a work order for someone to complete a task. And of course, I can do that from right within here. So I come in and I can assign a task for someone to do something, put a due date on it, and they would be notified that they have to go and, you know, perform that particular task in regards to this query, like changing a system to change the payment date. From here as well, we can think of all of the information that we used on the front end. So the question is change the payment date. If I want to know, I'm a new sort of staff member who doesn't know if we do deal with that, I can simply open up the knowledge base search. It's going to automatically search for me and give me the answer, can I change my payment date? And I can even email this right back to Jenny if she didn't find it on the portal when she was coming in. So as you can see from this credit union hub that we've built out inside of this CRM solution for MRM, what Sam talked about is this ability to provide a 360 view of the member, provide all of the interactions regardless of the channel in one single pane of glass so that we can get a real contextual view of the communications, the answers, and the products. That's going to help us serve them better. It's also going to give them a more personal experience, and it's also going to allow us to sell to them better because we're putting information out there that is more relevant to them. This 360 view is providing all the information in one single place, regardless of the channel of communication. But on the outside of things, for people coming in, they've got all of the different channels provided to them, and they can work in the area that they feel comfortable. And so you don't have to isolate a particular form of channel of communication to get a certain type of answer, which broadens you know, the scope by which you're able to communicate with your members. Really want to thank you for the time. We've covered a lot quickly in the 30 minutes, and we appreciate everybody joining. I know there's going to be some follow-up questions that are sent to you guys. There's also going to be an email that's going to go out, which is going to provide contact information for us, and as well as the presentation that Sam had given. If anybody has any questions, they want to dig into this in a little bit more detail, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you guys about it. Thanks everybody for your time.